They also carry risks for those confined within them, the risks of deadening sensibilities, and even from time to time of conscience. Everyone who has occupied a position like mine eventually comes to realize the importance of having individuals close by who, when necessary, can penetrate the workaday shuffle and return attention to what really matters. My most rousing wake-up calls have generally been sounded by Carol Iannone. A member of the NAS founding circle from the outset, she has always had the unfailing knack of being able to pull organizational conversations, wandering toward expediency, back to a recognition of principle, reminding me and her colleagues of the necessity to exemplify something better than what passes for the way of the world. Carol has also shown matchless dedication through 21 years of unremitting effort on the NES's behalf, both as an original and long-serving member of our board of directors and as a member of the editorial board of Academic Questions. But Carol has another claim on us, precisely because of her commitment to substance over pretense. The great good that she has done has never been adequately rewarded. When others leapt ahead by deconstructing cultural achievement and publishing in dust-gathering journals, Carol was masterfully interpreting literary genius in publications of broad, cultivated, and demanding readership, an attainment sneered at by some academicians for want of being peer-reviewed. Carol, who would grace any classroom, is thus currently to be found in none. Carol has also had the strange and disturbing experience of being the only individual whose nomination to the Council of the National Endowment for the Humanities was turned into a national controversy by the academic left on the bizarre grounds that her writings on literature hadn't appeared in those aforementioned dust gatherers. Barry Gross, who some of you may remember fondly as I do, who passed away in 1995, was the NAS's happy warrior, tirelessly in the lists in defense of the Academy's noblest ideals. The award named for him has been bestowed at 7 prior NAS conferences on 9 individuals for their activism on behalf of academic freedom and academic reform. Past recipients of the award have included such outstanding leaders as Tom Wood and Glenn Custard, authors of California's Civil Rights Initiative, and Alan Charles Kors, the founder of FIRE. It is my great pleasure to now present the Barry Gross Memorial Award to Carol Iannone in payment of a debt of honor long overdue.
I have prepared a few remarks. I hope they're few. I think they're a little more than a few. Bear with me. I am thrilled and honored and so pleased to receive this award. I can only hope that I have done enough and will do yet more to deserve it. The greatest intellectual experience of my life was entering college, where I began to waken to this dazzling thing called the life of the mind, to learn something of the landscape of our tradition and the scope of our civilization's achievements, all the beautiful, lofty things that Yeats wrote of. And this excitement has only grown through the years as I learned more and more to see the relatedness, the connections and interfaces of all areas of knowledge. And I feel that I can honestly say, if it isn't disrespectful to appropriate St. Paul for my humble purpose, that I was not disobedient or unfaithful to this heavenly vision. I tried in whatever ways came to me to preserve the marvel of this living experience for other young people, as in working with the National Association of Scholars and especially with our journal, Academic Questions. And I am so grateful that an organization like the NAS came into existence over 20 years ago, thanks to the tireless efforts of Steve Balch and others, and thanks to a number of admirable individuals who lent their experience and inspiration to this good and honorable endeavor. Some no longer with us, except in spirit, such as Peter Shaw and Barry Gross. We work on many levels, not only upholding the great and noble traditions of scholarship and criticism and combating the noxious cultural relativism and politicization that seeks to destroy them and to smother the search for truth, but also on practical matters connected to higher education, especially now that Peter Wood is on board, such as skyrocketing costs and the large rate of student debt. This reminds me of an amusing remark that my nephew made, commenting on the gap of years that separated him from his 3 older sisters, all of whom were close in age and all of whom attended college. "I am like an only child," he observed sagely, "except that I'm poor because of my sister's tuitions." Barry Gross always used to say to those who admired his courage in speaking out against the campus orthodoxy, the left-wing ideologies, the political correctness that would narrow, straighten, and shrivel the soul of human aspiration, that it did not take courage to speak out in the United States, that that's what we are supposed to do in the United States of America. It would take courage in the USSR, maybe, in Stalin's Russia, in Pol Pot's Cambodia, in Mao's China, but not here. That's what Americans are supposed to do. That's what our freedoms are for. And he was a model of outspokenness, rationality, clarity, plain speaking. He was inspiring also in his belief in philosophy and the powers of reason and in the artifacts of human creativity. And he was a proud skeptic in the Humean vein, and that too is part of our tradition. It isn't my take, but he was proof that one can be skeptical, can doubt, and yet still love everything and want to see it continue and to bear fruit and feed the heart. He was also remarkable for the joy in life he manifested, the buoyancy and flavor he took in life. I remember his delight in good restaurants and his colorful shirts and bow ties and his pinky rings. And Barry was so right that what we are doing at NAS is connected to, has everything to do with freedom, our freedom, and the freedom that we cherish in this country and generally in the West and in other countries that are endeavoring to bear the torch of human liberty. The very term liberal arts derives from the idea of freedom, that they are the pursuits of men and women who have enough time and thought and expression to study, savor, and enjoy them, and who are not restricted by fear of where thought may lead, as in dictatorships. And they play a part in preserving the freedom we enjoy. Through study of the arts and humanities, we understand where we came from, what the goads and obstacles have been, what the defeats and triumphs, mistakes and successes, the evils and the goods. We learn what is at stake in the human condition, what is needed for the human spirit to flourish. Young people learn that they are part of something larger than themselves, that they are heirs to a great tradition of thought and creation, a tradition that invites both their appreciation and participation. We learn that freedom requires care, watchfulness, eternal vigilance, and as President Reagan cautioned in his farewell address, that it is fragile and rare. The God-given entitlement of all mankind, yes, but not automatic, an entitlement that requires knowledge, cultivation, formation, moral awareness, an entitlement that doesn't float on air, but requires a cultural context in which to thrive, and sturdy and specific cultural institutions to bear it into the practical. My view of the price of freedom and liberty may sound exaggerated, overdramatic, excessively stringent for the success story that is the United States of America, but it comes from my father's experience. How easy it is for relatively decent countries to turn dark and for freedom to be lost, for citizens to begin to hear that knock on the door in the middle of the night, or to be picked up off the street, brought to a police station, and have their fingers broken, as happened to my father in Mussolini's Italy. This gave him nightmares, which recurred periodically and continued throughout his life, and he would cry out in his sleep. One of us would run to rouse him. He was a shift worker and often slept during the day, and when I was young, I used to worry what would happen if none of us was there to waken him. And as I got older still, I became even more impressed with the liberty that this country, that our civilization has managed to preserve for the individual in society, and to see how awfully, awfully difficult it can be to ignite this when it is not rooted in traditions nurtured over time, to see how awfully, awfully easily it can be mislaid or misunderstood. I think with a shudder of revolutions gone wrong, where a people grew tired of one restrictive regime and seemingly almost unthinkingly overthrew it for another, far worse, far more restrictive and life-denying, as in Cuba or in Iran. And I think with amazement of our own founding and the great men who understood that removing a tyranny is only a first step, who understood how to put in its place a decent, liberal self-government. And then again, how this can be lost by people who begin gradually to forget the fiber of virtue and the habits of mind and heart that are its foundation. Because no founding, no constitution, no declaration of independence, however wise and glorious, can mean anything without a people who have the breadth and scope to understand their basis and uphold the ideals implicit within them, and without a cultural context embodying them. Man is only partly a political animal and the bearer of rights. He also thrives on the riches of the imagination and the blessings of society. We need to be a whole-souled people, not just given to civics and politics and history, but to beauty, to art, music, literature, as well as the wonders of science and mathematics, of invention and discovery. And we need to have lively discourse, unfettered conversation, honest debate, all of which has been sadly diminishing since my time in college. This is why we need to cherish the great tradition and seek to see it passed on in vital form in our educational institutions, however uphill that battle may seem today. Things can change, things do change, and the good things will last. This is why we need to preserve the integrity of a real education with its core, its heart in the liberal arts. And we can be proud, we here today, that we are engaged in this great work for human happiness and flourishing, not only for ourselves, but just as importantly, for those who come after us. Thank you.